January 17, 1781. A British officer named Banastre Tarleton, a 26-year-old killer with a reputation so brutal the Americans just called him Bloody Tarleton, is riding hard toward a muddy cattle pasture in upstate South Carolina. He has over 1,000 of the best trained soldiers in the British Army. His target?
Convinced of an easy victory, Colonel Tarleton was about to make a fatal error.
A ragged, half-starved American force, half of them untrained farmers with muskets who, by every account on record, run at the first sight of a bayonet. Tarleton doesn't expect a battle. He expects a slaughter. What he rides into instead is one of the most perfectly executed traps in military history, a trap so good that officers at West Point are still forced to study it today. In under 60 minutes, his elite force will be annihilated. And the man who built the trap wasn't a nobleman, wasn't academy trained, wasn't even supposed to be a general at all. So how did a backwoods commander with zero formal military education turn a pack of farmers and part-time soldiers into the instrument that broke a professional army, in less time than it takes to watch a movie? Let's get into it. By late 1780, the American cause in the South was circling the drain. Charleston had fallen to the British that May, over 5,000 Continental soldiers taken prisoner in the single worst American defeat of the entire war. British General Lord Cornwallis now controlled most of the southern colonies, and loyalist militias were terrorizing patriot families across the countryside. By any reasonable measure, the revolution in the South was finished. George Washington sent General Nathanael Greene to salvage whatever was left of the Southern Continental Army. What Greene found when he arrived wasn't an army. It was maybe 1,400 starving, half-equipped soldiers scattered across the Carolina backcountry. And Greene did something that sounds insane on paper: he split his already tiny force in two. He handed 600 men to a brigadier general named Daniel Morgan, and sent him west, straight into danger. The man no one saw coming. Daniel Morgan was not a typical general. No wealthy family. No aristocratic connections. No military academy. He grew up dirt poor in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley, hauling supplies as a teamster through the wilderness. During the French and Indian War, he punched a British officer, and received 500 lashes for it. The scars covered his back for the rest of his life. Morgan used to joke that the British still owed him one lash, because the drummer counting the strikes had lost count. That's not the kind of man who forgets. And it's definitely not the kind of man who forgives. When the revolution broke out, Morgan showed up with a company of Virginia riflemen and fought in nearly every brutal engagement in the northern campaigns, from the siege of Quebec, where he took a musket ball through the neck and kept fighting, to the forests of Saratoga, where his sharpshooters helped tear Burgoyne's army apart. By 1780, Morgan carried a deep, personal hatred for the British military. By 1780, Morgan carried a deep, personal hatred for the British military. But more importantly, he understood something almost no other officer did. He understood exactly how ordinary men behave under fire. Morgan had fought alongside militia before. At Saratoga, he'd watched Virginia riflemen shatter British advances from the Treelene. But he'd also watched militia break and run at Camden, where a British bayonet charge sent over 2,000 Americans sprinting for their lives in minutes. Most Continental officers looked at that and concluded, militia are cowards. Useless. Don't rely on them. Morgan looked at the exact same evidence and reached a completely different conclusion. Militia weren't cowards. They were untrained civilians holding muskets. Asking them to stand in an open field and trade volleys with British regulars was like sending a high school football team to hold the line against an NFL defense. It was never about courage. It was about capability. And that one honest, unsentimental assessment, what his men could actually do, versus what he wished they could do, became the foundation of the trap. When Morgan learned Tarleton was chasing him with over 1,000 British regulars, dragoons, and loyalist infantry, he had a choice: run and try to link up with Greene, or stand and fight. He chose a place called the Cowpens, a well-known cattle pasture in the rolling grasslands of northern South Carolina. His officers thought he'd lost his mind. The broad river sat 5 miles behind them, cutting off any route of retreat. Open ground stretched in every direction, no forest to hide in, no swamp to slow a cavalry charge, no natural fortification of any kind. Morgan chose that ground on purpose. He didn't want his militia to have an escape route. He knew that if they could run, they would run. Putting a river at their backs removed the option entirely. Fight, or drown. But here's the part most commanders would have missed: Morgan wasn't asking his militia to do anything suicidal. He was asking them to do something small, specific, and temporary. And the night before the battle, he walked from campfire to campfire and personally briefed every single unit himself. He crouched down with shivering militiamen, cracked jokes, told stories about Saratoga, and laid out exactly what he needed from each man. He told the militia, "You won't face a bayonet charge. Fire 2 shots, then walk away with your honor intact." He told the regulars, "You are the wall, nothing gets through." He told the cavalry, hidden and waiting, "You're the ones who finish it." By dawn, every soldier on that field knew exactly what to do, and exactly when to do it. That kind of personal, one-on-one leadership the night before a battle was almost unheard of in the 18th century. Picture the battlefield from above, roughly 1,000 yards of gently sloping open ground, rising toward 2 low hills. Morgan built 3 deliberate lines, each set about 150 yards behind the last. Line 1, around 150 elite riflemen from Georgia and the Carolinas. Frontier marksmen who could hit a target at 250 yards. Their orders: pick off the officers. Shoot the epaulets. Target anyone on horseback. Then fall back. Line 2, roughly 300 militia under Andrew Pickens. And here's where Morgan's genius really shows. He didn't ask them to hold the line. He asked them to do 2 things: fire 2 aimed volleys at 50 yards, then turn and walk, not run, walk, around the back of the 3rd line and reform in the rear. That was the entire job. 2 shots and leave. Morgan told them to their faces, "Just give me 2 good fires, boys, and then you can fall back." Line 3, the backbone. About 450 Continental regulars and veteran Virginia militia under Lieutenant Colonel John Eager Howard, dug in on the first rise. Trained men who could stand and trade volleys with British infantry all day. And hidden completely out of sight behind the second hill, the Hammer. Lieutenant Colonel William Washington, cousin of George Washington himself, waiting with roughly 80 Continental dragoons and 45 mounted militia. Tarleton wouldn't see them coming until it was already over. Now picture it from Tarleton's side. He'd been chasing Morgan for days through frozen South Carolina backcountry, pushing his men brutally hard. On the night of January 16th, he woke his troops at 2 a.m. and force-marched them nearly 8 miles through pitch darkness, across swollen creeks and frozen mud, before dawn. His men were exhausted. Half-fed. Barely slept. Horses stumbling. But Tarleton was 26, aggressive to the point of recklessness, and had built a reputation as the most feared cavalry commander in the colonies. At the Battle of Waxhaws the year before, his dragoons cut down American soldiers after they tried to surrender, which is exactly how he earned the name, Bloody Tarleton. He didn't believe in caution. He believed in speed, shock, and the bayonet, and every previous fight with American militia had confirmed his belief that they'd crumble the second things got hot. So when his scouts reported Morgan's force sitting in the open with a river at their backs, Tarleton saw exactly what Morgan wanted him to see: a trapped, outnumbered enemy with nowhere to run. A gift. He attacked immediately. No rest for his men. No real reconnaissance. No meaningful reserve held back. He formed his infantry into a wide assault line and sent them forward across the frozen pasture at first light. First contact, Morgan's riflemen. Shots cracked across the field from long range, and British officers started dropping off their horses. A captain. A sergeant. The rifleman fired, reloaded, fired again, then melted backward toward the second line, exactly on schedule. The British pushed forward and saw the militia line ahead, rough-looking men in civilian clothes. This was the moment British regulars lived for, the charge against undisciplined colonials who would break and run. Drums beat the advance. Bayonets came down. The red line surged forward with a roar. At 50 yards, Pickens gave the order. 300 muskets fired at once. The volley tore through the British ranks, entire sections of the line crumpled where they stood. Thick gray smoke rolled across the field. Before it even cleared, the militia reloaded with shaking hands and fired a second volley into the staggering formation. Then, exactly as Morgan had drilled them the night before, they turned and walked left, circling behind the third line. Some jogged. Some looked back over their shoulders at the screaming redcoats behind them. But they moved together, as a unit, along the exact path Morgan had walked them through hours earlier. 2 good fires. Job done. Time to leave the stage. And this is where Tarleton makes the mistake Morgan had been counting on the entire time. When the British saw the militia turning and walking away, they read it as a rout. The Americans are breaking. This is Camden all over again. Officers screamed for pursuit. Adrenaline tore through the ranks, and the disciplined British advance dissolved into a full-speed charge. Formation gone. Officers lost control. Soldiers sprinted forward in a mob, bayonets forward, screaming, convinced this fight was already won. They crested the low rise, and ran straight into John Eager Howard's Continental Line. Fresh troops. Rested. Standing shoulder to shoulder, muskets loaded and aimed. Howard held his fire. 40 yards. 30 yards. Then, at nearly point-blank range, he gave the order. The volley hit the disorganized British charge like a wall. Men dropped by the dozen. Before the survivors could even process what had happened, Howard ordered a bayonet charge straight into the stunned, scattered British front. For the first time all morning, the British started stumbling backward. And that's when William Washington's cavalry exploded out from behind the second hill and smashed into the British right flank, 80 dragoons at full gallop, sabers swinging, tearing into a formation that was already reeling. The British line buckled. Then the final piece, Pickens's militia, the same men who'd retreated minutes earlier, reappeared on the far side of the field, reformed, and opened fire. Front. Right flank. Left flank. A full double envelopment, a textbook encirclement, executed by farmers, shopkeepers, and backwoods riflemen against one of the most professional armies on earth. The British army broke. Not slowly. Not in stages. It shattered. Soldiers threw down their muskets and raised their hands. Officers tried to rally pockets of resistance and were cut down or surrounded within minutes. Some fought back-to-back in desperate little clusters until they were overwhelmed. Others just dropped to their knees. Tarleton himself tried a last cavalry countercharge with his small reserve, and ran straight into William Washington's horsemen in a swirling melee of sabers and pistol fire. The two officers actually clashed in person. Washington took a wound. Tarleton broke free with a handful of survivors and fled the field at a dead gallop. The whole battle lasted roughly 1 hour. In that hour, Morgan's force killed or wounded over 300 British soldiers and captured nearly 600 more, including entire artillery crews and their cannons. Tarleton lost over 80% of his command. American losses, 12 dead, 60 wounded. Read those numbers again. Military historians double-check them because they barely look real. Morgan didn't just win a battle. He erased an entire British tactical force at a fraction of the cost. Think about what Morgan actually did. He took the single greatest weakness of his army, the fact that his militia couldn't be trusted to hold under a direct assault, and turned it into the centerpiece of the entire trap. He used their retreat as bait. He made the British believe they were winning at the exact moment they were losing. Every line, every movement, every withdrawal was choreographed to pull Tarleton deeper into a kill zone he never even saw closing around him. Morgan didn't fight the battle the British expected. He built a battle the British couldn't resist, and then let their own aggression destroy them. Cowpens broke the back of British strategy in the south. Cornwallis lost a quarter of his light troops and his most aggressive field commander in a single morning. But the psychological damage went even deeper. British officers across the entire southern theater had built their strategy around one assumption: American militia always break under pressure. Morgan just proved that assumption dead wrong, and the shockwaves rippled through every British garrison from Savannah to Wilmington. Furious, Cornwallis burned his own supply wagons trying to lighten his army and chase down Greene's forces in Virginia. That pursuit stretched his supply lines past the breaking point, wore his men down, and pulled him further and further from any real support. It was a chase born out of frustration, not strategy, and it dragged him straight to a small tobacco port on the Chesapeake Bay called Yorktown, where, that October, a combined American and French force surrounded him completely. You already know how that story ends. What makes Cowpens remarkable isn't just that the plan worked. It's how cleanly it worked. Morgan understood his own army better than any general on either side of the war. He didn't wish his militia were something they weren't. He didn't try to force them to stand and fight like regulars. He gave them a job they could actually do, told them exactly how to do it, and built the entire battle around the certainty that they'd leave the field the moment they were done. The retreat wasn't a flaw in the plan. The retreat was the plan. Militaries around the world still teach Cowpens as a textbook case of the double envelopment, and of understanding exactly what your own forces are capable of, then using the enemy's aggression as a weapon against them. Hannibal pulled off something similar at Cannae in 216 BC, luring the Roman legions into a pocket by letting his center bend inward while his flanks closed the trap. Historians have made the comparison for over 2 centuries. But Hannibal had veteran Carthaginian infantry and Numidian cavalry, professional soldiers who'd trained for years. Morgan did it with farmers who'd been harvesting corn 6 weeks earlier, against an enemy who absolutely should have known better. Tarleton spent the rest of his life trying to explain what happened that morning. His superiors blamed him for charging without reconnaissance. Cornwallis blamed the entire collapse of the Southern campaign on the losses from that single hour. None of them were ready for what Morgan built on that frozen field. A trap so elegant that the enemy did exactly what he needed them to do, at exactly the moment he needed them to do it, and never realized it until it was already over. The ground at Cowpens is quiet now. A national battlefield park marks where every line stood, where Washington's cavalry launched its charge. Green grass, gentle hills, open sky. It's easy to stand there today and forget that for 1 hour, on a freezing January morning, this quiet patch of land hosted one of the most lopsided victories in American military history. If you want more breakdowns like this, battles where the smartest move on the field looked like a mistake right up until it wasn't, subscribe, because we've got a lot more of these coming, and they only get wilder from here.